Today you're going to learn about different experiences in a truly inhospitable place, right in the heart of the Santa Cruz steppe. The wind and the cold, it seems, keep alive the dead from a cruel past. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave me a like if you enjoyed it, and share your opinion about this case. Now let's get started. My name is Yamil, I'm from San Rafael, Mendoza, and I want to tell you about some of the many experiences I had working as a mining technician in the south of our country. These were situations that not only I experienced, but also many of my coworkers at that time. At the beginning of my career, I got a job at a very important drilling company. And that's how they sent me to several areas in northern Argentina, like Salta, Catamarca, San Juan, and mainly the province of Jujuy. But at a certain point, this was towards the end of 2006, they transferred me to Santa Cruz. More precisely, to a ranch located about 17 kilometers from Route 12 between Pico Truncado and Gobernador Gregores. A very arid, very isolated place, but I assure you it's beautiful no matter how you look at it. The thing is, while working in this place, we experienced all kinds of paranormal situations that were completely unexplainable. In this place, there were a total of 20 people, including drillers, mechanics, wellheads, drivers, and the cook. Let me pause for a moment here because maybe it was with him that we started to notice something strange. Normally, the cook, whom we all actually knew very well, did his daily work and in the afternoon took his good nap religiously. And we started to notice that not only was he not sleeping, but he was also behaving very strangely. From his responses to his changes in habits, like for example, being in places where he didn't belong or showing up at times when you would expect him to be sleeping. Despite everything, he said he was fine, but we suspected that something was happening to him. As the days went by, I think we all started to have one problem or another, and maybe we understood the cook. Mainly at night, when we slept very poorly. At first, nobody said anything, until one of my companions brought up the subject and we each confirmed that we were going through exactly the same thing. There wasn't a single time when we could sleep well and through the night. Not only did we wake up all the time, but the nightmares were terrible, nightmares that we all had. And I assure you it was surprising, and the chills you felt were impressive. Hearing each of the guys tell almost the same thing. And of course, we still haven't found an answer.
Everything started to get worse when they moved us to a different camp. We went from sleeping in a campaign-style tent, which was a tent that could fit people. 10 bunk beds. We went from that place to sleeping in a room at the ranch. In the main house of the ranch, they had separated 2 large rooms, about 6 by 6 meters, with wooden floors and a bathroom. In that place. There were 4 bunk beds and we slept 4 at a time, 4 during the day and 4 at night. As soon as I entered that place, I felt a tremendous heaviness and a very deep sadness. I got a lump in my throat as soon as I walked in. There was a very particular smell that I had never experienced before.
I remember very well the first thing that happened. It was during the early morning. I woke up to a small noise and immediately something sat on my bed. That was how I felt. At that moment, I thought it was one of my roommates. But when I turned on the flashlight, there was no one sitting there, and everyone was sleeping in their own beds. A few days later, one of the guys, who usually listened to an evangelical radio station before going to sleep, told us, quite scared, how while everyone was sleeping and he was listening to the radio. Something completely invisible, of course. Aggressively ripped both earphones off him, and it was with such force that they didn't work anymore because the cable was cut. The thing is, he was completely awake and didn't see it coming at all. I mean, he didn't hear any noise or anything like that. It happened so suddenly that it really scared him. A few months later, different paranormal events had already happened to all the members of the team. To the point that we always slept with the light on. There were so many times when we woke up to vehicles running in the parking lot. Not just one, but more than one of the trucks revving constantly, and sometimes even honking the horn. And I want to clarify that when we went out and saw this, we were stunned and truly amazed because we confirmed that these trucks were completely empty. In other words, no one was playing a prank.
What I'm about to tell you was like something out of a movie, because then we saw how a front loader, a backhoe, after lunch, since I was alone, we all ran together and the coworker managed to get on and stop it before it crashed into a gas tank. It was tremendous. I'll never forget that. I remember it, and the hairs on my arms and back stand up. It scares me a lot. Everything started to get really tense after that. One night, while a couple of us were in the dining room, which was about 40 meters from that room I told you about, there were a couple of us waiting to be served dinner, and there were two colleagues left in the room, one sitting and taking off his boots and the other was flipping through a magazine. And it turns out that at that moment, one was taking off his boots and the other was flipping through the magazine. Their bed was moved toward the center of the room, about a meter toward the center of the room. They ran out and arrived almost out of breath and almost in a state of shock where we were. And they told us what had happened to them. Well, we were all very upset because we had already started to notice things happening that really caught our attention.
Something that worried us, and quite a lot, at least several of us, was that accidents started happening in a completely inexplicable way. Even though it's a job with certain dangers and we know that something happens from time to time, unfortunately, it was very strange the way things were happening, and the number, above all else, the general mood had also changed. These are jobs with an excellent work environment, and that wasn't the case here. Even though everything had started out perfectly, as time went by, each of us began to fall into a state of bitterness, anger, and depression. I wouldn't know what to call it. What I'm telling you reached such a level that one of my teammates, when he went on leave, made a final decision inside the same facility. A very important detail is that we realized that when something happened, not just an accident, but also, after most of the paranormal events, we would smell a very particular odor. After quite some time, one of the guys realized it was the smell of sulfur. At that moment, we connected everything that was happening with something bad, obviously. An unforgettable situation. It was one night while we were working with one of the machines. And the cook appeared, running and scared. I had rarely seen anyone like that in my life. When we managed to calm him down, he told us that from the kitchen, when he turned around, he saw a woman. There wasn't any woman on the property at that moment, and she went from one room to another, passing through the walls. These apparitions with no logic or explanation started to become very common, since many of us saw people or shadows that appeared and disappeared out of nowhere. For example, on another occasion, something very strange happened because we even had a conversation with this entity. We were in one of the containers where the spare parts were kept, and a man appeared, a local, who didn't raise any suspicion. I can assure you, this guy, who seemed very confused, was looking for something. My partner asked him what he was looking for and what he was doing there, but it was like he didn't know how to answer or what to say. He was just searching for something non-stop. At one point, he went off to the side, where we lost sight of him, and when we got closer, he had disappeared. And in that place, there was actually no exit at all. We were really stunned by this situation. At a later year-end barbecue, we may have finally grasped the reason behind all that was occurring. It was information we were unaware of until that moment. To this gathering, besides all the staff, many ranch owners from the area, those close to the property, were invited, mostly them. It was already early morning when one of us shared some of the many paranormal events we had experienced recently. And one of these ranch owners, an old guy, looked at us seriously as if he understood what it was about. And as he kept listening to what each of us was daring to share, he interrupted us, saying he had the answer to all of this.
He was a man of about 70 years old, and his father had been in the Rebellion of 21, the famous Patagonia Rebelde. And he told us that on that ranch, that all the executions that took place in that area were They kept many bodies. In the room where we slept, well, that's when everything came crashing down on us. On top of all the fear we already had, we got even more scared because terrible things had happened. There were many people who were killed, whom the army kept in that place. It was a very big place, very, very, very big. And it had facilities. You can tell that during the cattle ranching era, at that time, there was a lot of work. You can see that a lot of people worked there. And, well, there were people who worked on that ranch who was also executed by firing squad, this man told us.
After listening to him, we understood, like I told you, that maybe all of this that was happening was related to that. At that time, the cook was no longer there, he had retired and was replaced by Rufina, a female cook. She was the first female co-worker we had, and after listening carefully, she told us something. We had to write a letter to these people trapped in an intermediate plane, mainly telling them that our intentions were not to take over the place, that we were just there. At the same time, we apologized to them and also offered them our help, asking if there was anything we could do to make sure they were all okay.
Incredibly, after that, we also started lighting candles. She told us to light a little candle. She calmed down a lot. She really calmed down. When the level went down of events, thanks to that letter we wrote, that Rufina wrote, well, shortly after we finished, we met the goal of meters drilled, we fulfilled the contract and we had to move. But that's the experience in that place. Later, I went to work somewhere else and I came back in 2013, 5 years later, and I felt the same. I was in another place in some containers already with air conditioning, private bathroom and everything. I didn't have any bad experiences, but when I got close to that place, to that room where the bodies had been hidden, I felt the same thing again. I felt the same cold, the same anguish, the same sadness again. So every now and then, I lit a candle for him.
Friends, thanks for reading until the end. Please leave your comments, so we can all get to know the different opinions about this case. What do you think happened and why? Have you ever experienced a situation like this? See you in the next episode. And as always, I send a big hug to all of you.